صلوات آل محمد وآل محمد. Inshallah we'll be reciting Surah Fajr. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والفجر وليال عشر والشفع والوتر والليل إذا يسر هل في ذلك قسم لذي حجر ألم تر كيف فعل ربك بعاد إرم ذات العماد التي لم يخلق مثلها في البلاد وثمود الذين جابوا الصخر بالواد وفرعون ذي الأوتاد الذين طغوا في البلاد فأكثروا فيها الفساد فصب عليهم ربك سوط عذاب إن ربك لبالمرصاد فأما الإنسان إذا ما ابتلاه ربه فأكرمه ونعمه فيقول ربي أكرمن وأما إذا ما ابتلاه فقدر عليه رزقه فيقول ربي أهانن كلا بل لا تكرمون اليتيم ولا تحاضون على طعام المسكين وتأكلون التراث أكلا لما وتحبون المال حبا جما كلا إذا دكت الأرض دكا دكا جاء ربك والملك صفا صفا وجيء يومئذ بجهنم يومئذ يتذكر الإنسان وأنى له الذكرى يقول يا ليتني قدمت لحياتي فيومئذ لا يعذب عذابه أحد ولا يوثق وثاقه أحد. يا أيتها النفس المطمئنة ارجعي إلى ربك راضية مرضية فادخلي في عبادي وادخلي جنتي. صدق الله العلي العظيم. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful. I swear by the daybreak, and the 10 nights, and the even and the odd, and the night when it departs. Truly in that there is an oath from those who possesses understanding. Have you not considered how your Lord dealt with Aad, the people of Aram, possessed with lofty buildings, the likes of which were not created in the other cities, and with Thamud, who hewed out the rocks in the valley, and with Fir'aun, the Lord of the hosts, who committed inordinancy in the cities. So they made great mischief therein. Therefore your Lord let down upon them a portion of the chastisement. Most surely your Lord is watching. And as for man, when his Lord tries him, then threats him with the honor and makes him lead an easy life, he says, my Lord honors me. But when he tries them differently, then straightens to him his means of subsistence, he says, my Lord has disgraced me. Nay, but you do not honor the orphan, nor do you urge one another to feed the poor. And you eat away the heritage, devouring everything indiscriminately. And you love wealth with exceeding love. Nay, when the earth is made to crumble to pieces, and your Lord comes, then also the angels in ranks, and hell is made to appear on that day. On that day shall man be mindful, and what shall being mindful then avail him? He shall say, oh, would that I have spent before for this my life. But on that day shall no one chastise with anything like his chastisement, and no one shall bind with anything like his binding. O soul that art at rest, return to your Lord, well pleased with him, well pleasing him. So enter among my servants, and enter into my garden. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.
One is that I have a lot of snacks around the lawn. I do have a please drink tea and snacks to be eaten. We are trying to have everyone please. Secondly, the SABA lobby, the main lobby, they are collecting funds and volunteers to create so to encourage people to check out their table. And with that, I want to invite our team. Maybe there's lots of stuff.
That echo is no joke. Yeah, I'll put it on. Yeah, you just put it there. Yeah.
One more salawat, please. Allahumma salli ala أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا والشفيع ذنوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا أبي القاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين واللعنة الدائم على أعدائهم أجمعين أما بعد فقد قال الله الحكيم في محكم كتابه الكريم أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم يمنون عليك أن أسلموا قل لا تمنوا علي إسلامكم بل الله يمن عليكم أن هداكم للإيمان إن كنتم صادقين صدق الله العلي العظيم صلوات الله. For the love of our beloved Prophet and his beloved progeny, please recite a second loud salawat. For the hastening in the return of our beloved 12th Imam, a third final loud salawat. Inshallah, tonight, being the night of Arba'een, we are going to discuss another topic that is very near and dear to my heart. I feel like I say that every night. Hopefully that's a good thing. The topic that we will be discussing tonight, inshallah, is a question that many of our younger generation, as well as many of our adults, will have at one point of their life or another. And that title, the title that I've given to tonight's talk, is the following: the practical differences between a moral atheist and a Muslim. How is life different for a good Muslim compared to the life of someone who doesn't even believe in this religion and yet is a moral individual? He is fair, he does not lie, he does not backbite, and so on and so forth. What are the fundamental differences between the lives of these two individuals? This is a topic that is very, very important to discuss. And the reason for it is because the society that we live in is moving more and more in this direction. That yes, you as an individual, you can be spiritual without necessarily being religious. You can be a good person without believing in this religion or that religion or affiliating yourself with any organized religion for that matter. And yet you find in the movement of Imam al-Hussein, when he wants to head out on this movement and on this journey, he has conversations in which he explains why he starts to head out on this journey. And one of those conversations is this wasiyah, or this will he is making to Muhammad Hanafiya. And in this wasiyah and in this will, he explains that the only reason why I am setting out on this journey and I'm beginning this movement and I'm starting this trip is because I want to revive the ways of my grandfather, the Prophet sallallahu wasallam alayhi. And I want to enjoin the good and forbid the evil, and I want to bring back the ummah to the path that my great-grandfather had begun. Because I started this journey because I want to bring people back to the path of Islam. And you find that this is so important for him that he goes out and he makes a sacrifice and he takes his women and his children with him, and the rest of the story that we are familiar with. Therefore, the very message behind the movement of Imam al-Hussein was to revive this religion. Many times you'll hear people say Imam al-Hussein's movement was against tyranny. His movement was to uphold social justice and things of these nature. These are all true. These are all part of the religion of Islam. But as a whole, Imam Hussein had his movement to revive this religion. Yes, as part of this religion, these principles are also built into the religion. Social justice is something that is built into the religion of Islam. But you're not to confine the movement of Imam al-Hussein only to social justice, for example. This is confining the movement of Imam al-Hussein. So you find Imam al-Hussein is looking at society and he's saying the solution to society is for the path and the ways of my grandfather to be revived again, for this whole religion to be revived again. That's why it's so important for him. He's willing to sacrifice so much for it. And yet society tells us something else today. Society tells us today, as long as you're a moral person, you're a good person, you don't lie, you don't backbite, you don't steal, you don't, God forbid, murder, then that's just, everything is done then. There's nothing else that you need in life. And this question comes up then, what's the difference between me living life as a Muslim versus living life as simply a moral individual? Is there even a difference between the two? If someone didn't even believe in this religion, he was an atheist, but he was a moral atheist, as you will find many atheists are. What's the difference between him and a person who says, no, I practice the religion of Islam? Are there any differences between them at all or not? How is this religion of Islam a blessing for us in our lives on a practical level? Hence, the title, The Practical Differences Between a Moral Atheist and a Muslim. That is the topic that we will be delving into tonight by posing the following questions. Number one, how was the religion of Islam a blessing for the people of the time of the Prophet and the time of the Ahlul Bayt? Number two, why was it that when the Prophet began his message, when Islam was just emerging, why was it that this Arabian Peninsula was not under the control of any of the big empires of that time? Not under the control of the Persian Empire, not under the control of the Roman Empire. It's almost as if nobody wanted this Arabian Peninsula. Number three, how is Islam a blessing for my life and your life today in the 21st century? Number four, does Islam only offer moral teachings to us? Or are there more things that Islam brings to the table for my day-to-day life? Number five, what are the practical differences between a moral atheist and a Muslim? And number six, can an atheist provide a moral framework for living your life without the help of any religion? These are the 6 questions that we will delve into tonight. Salawat ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. Allow us to begin from here. Whenever we talk about Islam, usually we as Muslims might look at the religion of Islam and we think of it more as a burden. Because Islam puts all these restrictions on us. You have to walk in a certain way, you have to talk in a certain way, you have to carry yourself in a certain way, there's a dress code that you have to observe, you can't have any type of food that you want to have, and so on and so forth. And many times in our minds, we're thinking, God really owes us a lot. Because there's all these other people, they don't listen to him. But here am I should listen to him. I am like 1%, 2% of people out there who actually listen to him. This is a burden I'm carrying, and God owes me something because of this burden that I'm carrying. This is a perspective that even the people of the time of the Prophet had as well, some of them. And they used to come to the Prophet, and they used to say the words that we quoted in the verse that we recited at the beginning of the lecture. They used to come to the Prophet, Ya Rasulullah, now that we believed in you, and we supported you, and we said we are Muslim, and we entered into the realm of Islam, what are you going to do for us now? They used to come and place minnats upon the Prophet. Yes? This minnat is different from the mannat that we have, in the Urdu language. You say mannat. This is a different thing, yes? This is minnat, meaning what? You remind someone of the good deeds that you've done for them. You remember that time you didn't have anything, I gave this to you? Remember that time you were really struggling? Who helped you out of that situation? I helped you out of that situation. This is minnat. The Quran says, يَمُنُّونَ عَلَيْكَ أَنْ أَسْلَمُوا. They come to you, Ya Rasulullah. They say, Muhammad, what are you going to do for us? Because we believed in you when nobody believed in you. And then look at the response of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to them that applies to us as well. He said, Ya Rasulullah, go and tell them, قُلْ لَا تَمُنُّوا عَلَيَّ إِسْلَامَكُمْ. Don't come here acting like God owes you something. بَلِ اللَّهُ يَمُنُّ عَلَيْكُمْ. No, you owe God. And hadakum lil iman, the fact that He guided you to this religion. So the Quran and Islam is very clear and completely open and public and not shy at all about the fact that no, this is not a burden. Don't get this wrong. Yes, it makes life a little difficult, but at the end of the day, it's more of a blessing for you than it is a burden. Yes, there are restrictions. That's what taklif means, by the way. Yes, taklif, mukallaf means what? There's kulfa. There's a weight, there's a burden that this person is carrying. Yes, there is a burden, but there is more of a blessing than there is a burden. Therefore, don't come to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and say, well, what do you owe us? What are you going to do for us? No, the Quran says, listen, I'm a blessing for you. And this is, of course, a question that we have to answer when it comes to our younger generation, even for adults as well. How is Islam a blessing for me, though? How is Islam a blessing for me? Because when it came to the time of the people of the time of the Prophet and Ahlul Bayt, it was very clear how Islam was a major blessing for them. How so? Well, because Islam took these Arab and these people who lived in the Arabian Peninsula from being nobodies and turned them into one of the major powers in world history. Islam did this. Before Islam, this Arabian Peninsula, nobody even cared about it. It was a barren land. You couldn't even grow anything in it, as you still can't. And it was such a barren land, it was such a useless land, that the major empires at that time of the world did not even care to conquer it. When you look at the world at that time, there were 3 major empires in power. Yes? On the west, you had who? You had the Roman Empire, the Byzantine Empire, with their reliance on Greek civilization and great philosophers and the Aristotles of the world and the Platos of the world. They had their whole civilization. On the right, you had the Persian Empire. It had its own power, tens of countries that we know of today were part of this empire. Then in the south, parts of Africa, parts of Yemen, you had the Aksum Empire. None of these empires even cared to conquer the Arabian Peninsula. Why? Why would we want to care to conquer this place? It's just a barren land. It's just a bunch of deserts. The only thing that this Arabian Peninsula had was this Kaaba, was Mecca. That was the basic thing. You had Mecca, you had Medina, and then between these was what? Deserts. You go to the north deserts, you go to the east deserts, south deserts. Yes, you have a little Ta'if in there too. But it was such a barren land. It's almost as if nobody cared about it even. And historians talk about this. That when our Prophet emerged, this is one of the reasons why he did not live under any empire. Because nobody even cared about that land. It was such a barren land that when the kuffar wanted to challenge the Prophet and they wanted to ask him for a miracle, take a look at how smart they were. Very smart. They said, you know what? We're going to ask this Muhammad for a miracle. But deep down, we're not going to believe in him anyways. So at least let us ask him for a miracle that when he makes it happen, we'll benefit from it. We're not going to believe in him anyways. But at least we'll get him to do something, and that something will remain for us afterwards. We'll benefit from it. So when the Prophet will ask them, what is it that you want from me? They would say, Ya Rasulullah, oh Muhammad, you have to prove to us you're a prophet. How? They would say, you know what would be really good? This Mecca, it's very dry, very difficult to find water. If you can have a spring of water gush out of the earth all of a sudden. أو تفجر لنا من الأنهار تفجيرا, or ينبوعا. You can have a spring of water all of a sudden. Because you're thinking, we're not going to believe in him anyways, but he's going to make it happen. And when he makes it happen, now we have a spring of water in Mecca. We don't have to worry about anything. And then they said, Ya Muhammad, you know what else you can do? You can build these really nice gardens. If you build these really nice gardens, then we'll believe in you. Why? Because they said, you know what? We're not going to believe in him, but we'll walk away with gardens. If you have gardens in Mecca, that's a lot. This is how barren this land was. And this is part of the reason why this message of the Quran is a miracle. It's part of the reason. Because this Quran did not come out from the midst of some great civilization. It didn't come out from the midst of some Roman civilization. It didn't come out of the midst of the Persian Empire. It didn't come out of a place that had schools and philosophers and intellectuals. No, it came out of the middle of a desert. That's what made the message of the Prophet so special. That's why we look upon this Prophet, we say this Prophet is Ummi. What does Ummi mean? Scholars have different opinions. At the very least, everyone agrees he was never schooled. No school. What school? What university? No. Muhammad came out of the middle of the desert of Mecca. Added to how special his message was. And the Prophet and the message of Islam took this group of people and turned them into one of the major powers in world history. So much so that historians, those of them who are fair enough, those of them who are objective enough, when they look at world history and they trace which civilizations contributed to science and knowledge, they will tell you the Greek and Roman civilization for many years. Then many times you'll find historians will jump to the Renaissance and the European civilization today. And in between those two, what they're really missing is what? This huge block of the Islamic civilization. And the Prophet took these tribes that used to kill one another, they used to attack one another, they were savages, many of them. He united them and then he turned them into a power that remained in world history. So how Islam was a blessing for the time, for the people of the time of the Prophet is very clear. When you entered into Islam, you were automatically part of a brotherhood, of a sisterhood. Now you have a government. Now you are becoming somebody because of this religion of Islam. This is very clear. But we don't live 14 centuries ago based on the Qamari calendar. We also don't live, many years ago based on the Gregorian calendar. We live in the 21st century. And so someone says, well, in the 21st century, how is Islam a blessing for me? Okay, wonderful. We had this great past and this great history and we had this civilization and so on and so forth. Okay, I don't live in that type of a time now. In fact, I live in a time where Muslim countries are very much behind. This is the reality of the matter. And it pains your heart. And you see Muslim countries, many times, foreign powers, they're just able to just come and do whatever they like. And just walk away. Occupy the country 20 years and then walk away all of a sudden whenever they like. Where was Islam before this Muslim civilization? Where's Islam today? You say, well, I don't live at that time. How is Islam a blessing for me now? That is the question that we want to answer. Recite salawat, please. Normally, when we want to explain how Islam affects our life on a day-to-day basis, this is the normal route that we take. If you were to pose this question to the average Muslim, this is what he will tell you. If you were to ask him, how does Islam affect your life on a day-to-day basis? He would say, Islam teaches me not to lie. Islam teaches me not to backbite. Islam teaches me to not engage in haram relationships. Yes? Islam teaches me to be respectful of the rights of my neighbors and relatives and parents. And if you take a look at all of these things that he is naming for you to explain how Islam is a blessing for him, you will see the only thing that he is speaking of are the moral teachings in Islam. And there's no problem with this when you're introducing Islam to someone who's approaching Islam from the outside. It's very important for you to point and pinpoint those areas of Islam that you have in common with other people. Islam says don't lie. Everyone on earth says don't lie. Oh, we can build a connection now. We have something in common. Oh, Islam says don't kill, don't, violate the rights of others. Okay, you build a connection with this person. There's nothing wrong with this. In fact, in a society, in a culture we live in, where Muslims are dehumanized and Muslims are seen as individuals who at times are not even human, this is exactly what you're supposed to do. You speak about the moral teachings of Islam. Say, this is what Islam teaches me. Islam teaches me to be kind, to be compassionate, so on and so forth. This is all good and fine. When it comes to looking at Islam from within the religion, this is where things start to take a turn. When you look at Islam from within the religion, you have to understand Islam is not just simple moral teachings. This is the one point that I want you to walk away with tonight. Islam is not just some simple moral teachings. And we as Muslims many times do a big injustice to Islam and the message of the Prophet when we confine Islam to only being a set of basic moral teachings. What does Islam teach you to do? Not to lie, to be nice to my neighbor, to be compassionate. Islam tells you to do all of those things and more. Say, well, what's the problem, Shaykh? If I just say, yeah, Islam tells me to do all of these things, there's nothing wrong with that. It's part of Islam. Yes, it's part of Islam. But you're confining it to just this. And you know where the problem starts to arise? When you confine Islam to only some basic moral teachings, you actually now take away from Islam being any special. Islam is not special anymore. Why? Because these moral teachings, you don't even have to be Muslim to understand them. You could be Jewish, you could be Christian, you could be Hindu, you could be Sikh, you could be Buddhist, you could be whatever you want to be. You could be atheist and still believe in all of these akhlaqi principles. An atheist will agree with you. He will say, I don't lie, I'm compassionate, I'm kind, I don't violate the rights of others, I'm nice to my parents, I'm nice to my relatives. Any moral teaching that you put in front of him, he'll say, yeah, I understand all of these things. And here you are saying, no, Islam is the path to salvation. And yet the way you define Islam, it's almost as if you don't even need Islam. Because the atheist also understands all of these things. And this is one of the biggest mistakes that parents make with their children and educators make with their students. That they confine the message of Islam only to moral teachings. And this child grows up, he says, well, what's the difference between, this person and that person and me? They're kind, they're compassionate, they're wonderful, they're nice akhlaq, good akhlaq, they have better akhlaq than my parents. There's a lot to be said about that, but we'll move on. And they don't have to pray 5 times a day, they don't have to fast, they can eat any type of meat that they like, they can do whatever they want. When you confine Islam to just be nice and be compassionate, this is the problem you end up dealing with. And it's completely valid if you define Islam in this way to say that you can be spiritual without being religious. Very much possible. There's no problem. I would completely agree with you. If this is only what Islam brought to the table to tell us, you don't even need Islam in your life. This is in many ways a disrespect to the human being. If you say, no, you need Islam to tell you all of this. You don't need Islam to tell you all of this. We already knew all of this. Every human being on earth knows these things. So when we speak of the religion of Islam, we have to have a full understanding of the scope of the religion. Then you will understand why Islam is a blessing and how others might even be deprived of this blessing that you have. You have a blessing that others are deprived of. But in order to understand that, you have to understand the full scope of the religion. Because the akhlaqi part, for the most part, is something that everyone understands. You say, okay, well, what is the full scope of the religion anyway? Well, the full scope of the religion, in a very I'm just simplifying things. You have 3 categories of teachings. Yes, many of us might have heard this categorization of the teachings within Islam. You have your belief system, what you would call your aqa'id. You have your akhlaqiyat. Don't lie, be compassionate, be kind, so on and so forth. This is the second category. Then you have a third category, which are the day-to-day rules by which you are supposed to live your life. And these three are supposed to be they're supposed to be compatible towards one another. They're supposed to be in sync with one another. If you want to understand the full scope of the religion, you have to look at all three of these categories and see how all three of these categories affect your life on a day-to-day basis. And I can tell you, and I'm making this claim, and hopefully the rest of the talk will prove this point for you, that if you look at Islam in this complete manner, then you will see Islam is a blessing that others are deprived of. Islam is not this burden that doesn't add anything to you, just adds restrictions to you, and just adds some akhlaqi teachings that you already knew. It's not that. It brings a lot of other things to the table that others don't have and you have. And so we'll begin from the belief system. Yes? What is it and how does this belief system within Islam affect my life on a day-to-day basis that an atheist who is a very good person is deprived of these blessings because he does not have this same belief system? This is where we will begin. Number one, very basic. You as a Muslim, no matter what's going on the face of earth, no matter how much oppression is happening, no matter how dark the world gets, no matter how chaotic things get, you know there is a purpose to life. You know there's a reason behind things that are happening. Even if it becomes very difficult for you, and even on social media nowadays, you see this all the time. Because information is passed along so easily, you feel of all the oppression that's happening around in the world, yes? 50 years ago, when something was happening in China, we had no idea. 20 years ago, maybe some news agency would talk about it. Nowadays, no. You go on your social media, it's all automatically there. 20 years ago, Palestine was this thing in the corner of the world. Nobody really had any idea what was happening there. Nowadays, you go, no, everyone's filming everything. They throw a rock, they throw a missile, everyone's. Sometimes it feels like this world is very dark, full of oppression, full of injustice. And in some ways, it is like that. But deep down, what keeps you and I sane at the end of the day, you say there's a purpose to life. And apply that to your personal lives as well. When you're going through a very tough time, you sit there and say, well, there's some purpose. It may not make a lot of sense to me. There's someone up there who's running this show. Someone up there who knows what he's doing. You have a sense of purpose in life. This is something that affects your life on a day-to-day basis. Go and read studies that are done, the correlation between individuals who struggle with their mental health and a sense of lack of purpose in life. Go and read studies that are done on people who feel happy in their life, the richness of their life, and how that connects with them having a purpose in life. I know why I'm doing the things I'm doing. I know why terrible things might happen. I know why good things might happen. It's all part of a bigger plan that he has. And the only reason why you can have that belief at the end of the day is what? Because you're Muslim, because you have this framework. Otherwise, an atheist does not have that. Go ask the atheist what they say is the purpose of life. They will give you the most silly answers. Yes, they'll say the purpose of life is to do those things that makes you happy. This is the purpose of life? That's the most depressing thing I've ever heard. It's like if you imagine whatever hobby you have. You like to play basketball, for example, or whatever. You like to paint. It says the purpose of life was for you to sit somewhere and paint. The other one will tell you, no, this is a wrong question. Why does it even matter what the purpose of life is? Habibi, the purpose of life is very important. I'm going through all this trouble. If you tell any human being there's no purpose, what happens? This person is very close to taking his own life. It makes sense too. If you don't find a purpose in what you're going through in life, it becomes unbearable. An athlete, he can go through the difficult exercises that he has to go through. He will have a very strict diet. He has to wake up at a certain time, go to sleep at a certain time, because he knows there's a purpose behind all of this. Yes? You take that purpose away, he says, what am I, crazy putting myself through all this difficulty? And he's right. This is something that you have as a believer. Affects your life on a day-to-day basis. Recite the salawat, please. Ya Ali. Moving on to number 2. A second thing that you know as a Muslim and as a believer, and that an atheist does not know and cannot provide, and that he is deprived of, is the following. You know exactly what happens after you die. You know exactly what happens when the human being dies. It's not a mystery to you. You don't sit there and wonder what's going to happen after we die. No, Islam has given you a full perspective of what happens. I can tell you exactly what happens. You even know the names of the angels that are going to come talk to you. And this is a question that every single human being on earth needs an answer to. Otherwise, it just remains as a mystery for the human being. What happens after I die? Do I just go into some sort of a coma? This is what atheists will tell you, huh? Neil deGrasse Tyson? Yes? He has the mustache you have to remember who I'm talking about. It's just a coma. Just like, when you're asleep, you never realize you're asleep, right? Like, I'm just asleep. This is just how it's going to be. You live for 100 years. You did all these awesome things while you were alive. Then what happens? Nothing. You just die. You go into this coma, and that's it. That's the end of life. Okay, so what happens? He can't tell you. He has no idea. But you know exactly what happens after you die. And this is one of those concerns and worries of the human being. Let me share a short story with you, yes? This is a story that touched me on a personal level. Not too long ago, a brother from another community reached out to me. And this brother said, we need you to deliver, a lecture for a majlis tarheem. Someone's passed away, yes? And we need you to deliver a lecture, and it was online, because this was during COVID and everything. And I said, okay, so wonderful, definitely we can do it, inshallah. And I said, so how old is this person who passed away? Just to get an idea of, because the family usually wants you to talk a little bit about them, maybe mention a little bit about them, what they did, so on and so forth, their legacy, that kind of stuff. So I said, how old is this person who passed away? And I was expecting this really high number. Right? This person is at the end of his life and so on and so forth. This brother turned to me, he said, no, this person who passed away was 10 years old. That's so tough, so tough. 10-year-old boy passed away. And the more I talked, I then realized the family that he was referring to. Because I had visited this family, I had visited their home when I visited that community. I knew the family, 2 kids, yes? The younger one, this would have been the younger boy. And this younger boy, even for him to be born, from the moment he was born, medical conditions. One after another one, surgery, difficulty, so on and so forth. He finally got him to the age of 10. All of a sudden, it's gone. Yes, this 10-year-old has left this world. I remember speaking to the father. You can imagine, by the way, how difficult this is for a father. Extremely difficult. I mean, if you're a father, you know what I'm talking about, or a mother, then even more. But here's the thing that the father said. The father was speaking to me. He said, I know I'm supposed to be patient, and it's very difficult, and I have to rely on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, all these things that we say and we should say. And he said, you know what it is? My worry is, as a father, I have a sense of wanting to know where my child is. Because this child, I protected my whole life. I was always watching after him, and now I don't even know where he is. He's passed away. I can't be there for him. These are issues that every human being will deal with at one point or another. For some, God forbid, it's a young child. God forbid. Some, it might be a mother, a father, an aunt, an uncle, cousin. God forbid. Happens, right? And you always have this concern, where is this person? But if you come and ask that question to Ahlul Bayt, they will give you a very clear and beautiful response. So much so that you as a father or mother, you don't even have to worry about that anymore. The companion of the 6th Imam came and asked him a question. Very beautiful question. He He said, does a believer ever leave this world forcefully? Do they forcefully take his soul when he's leaving this world? The sixth Imam told him, he said, that is never the case. If he doesn't want to go, they don't take his soul. That's a big claim. It's a big claim. Doesn't even make sense from our perspective, yes? I mean, we know all these people, they didn't want to go, and they went. What's this Imam talking about? He said, هَلْ يُكْرَهُ الْمُؤْمِنُ عَلَى قَبْضِ الرُّوحِ? Is it ever the case that a believer is forced, and his soul is forcefully taken away? They said, no, never the case. How is that even possible? And he said, Ya ibn Rasulullah, but we know all these people, they leave this world. It looks like they're forcefully being taken. He said, let me explain to you what happens. He said, in those moments where this person can see this world and the next world, and Malakul Maut comes upon him, this is what Malakul Maut says. The hadith says, Malakul Maut approaches him, and he is in a position of difficulty. Because he's leaving this world, he's used to this world, he's going from what he is familiar with to the unfamiliar. Initially, it's difficult for him. He says, جَزِعَ عِنْدَ ذَلِكَ. It becomes difficult for him. So what does Malakul Maut say? فَيَقُولُ لَهُ مَلَكُ الْمَوْتِ. The angel of death says this to him. Ya wali Allah, O friend of Allah, لَأَنَا أَبَرُّ بِكَ وَأَشْفَقُ عَلَيْكَ مِنْ وَالِدٍ رَحِيمٍ. Malakul Maut turns to him and says, listen, I'm going to be kinder to you than your own parents. I'm going to be kinder to you than your own mother and father. You have nothing to worry about. Look at this perspective on death. Look at the other perspective. You go into a coma. Malakul Maut says, I'm going to be kinder and more compassionate to you than your own parents in those moments. Then the hadith continues, because he still hasn't answered the question. The hadith continues. He says, in those moments, Malakul Maut shows him what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has prepared for him in the next world. And he shows him the Ahlul Bayt who are waiting to welcome him happily. Then Malakul Maut asks him, he says, Hada Rasulullah, this is the Prophet waiting for you. This is Ali ibn Abi Talib waiting for you. And Malakul Maut asks him, he says, do you want to go now? Or do you want to stay? And then the hadith says, فَمَا مِنْ شَيْءٍ أَحَبُّ إِلَيْهِ مِنْ إِسْتِلَالِ رُوحِهِ. There is nothing more beloved to this man than for him to leave this world. And he himself voluntarily says, take me. I would prefer to go there. That place is a lot better. That place is a lot more wonderful for me. This is the perspective Ahlul Bayt give us. You can only have this perspective. Why? Because you're a believer. Because you have this blessing in your life. When someone leaves this world, a loved one of yours, you don't have to worry, what's happening to him? Is he in pain? Is he in... No, if he was a good person, inshallah, he's in a wonderful place. But you can only say that because you have this framework, though. If you're an atheist, how do you answer this question? I'll tell you, because atheists are asked this question all the time. Famous atheist, Christopher Hitchens. There are 4 famous atheists. They call themselves the 4 horsemen. You can look them up and Google them later. Dawkins and Hitchens and 2 of the other ones as well. They asked Christopher Hitchens in an interview. Yes? They said, you know what? If someone is going through the final moments of his life and you're sitting by their deathbed and you're holding his hand, because you don't believe in any afterlife or anything like that, what are you going to tell him? How are you going to comfort him? I mean, if you're there in the deathbed, you're going to be like, oh, don't worry, it'll be fine. Yeah, we say this kind of stuff, right? You have to say it. This guy's going through pain. Okay. What would you say? You know what he said? He laughed. He said, I probably shouldn't be the one holding his hand in those moments. Because I have nothing to tell him. What am I going to tell him? Inshallah, you go into a coma. How comforting. This is the second reason why your belief system impacts your life every single day. Recite salawat. Number three, the third effect that your belief system has. You as a believer, and only as a believer, you know that none of your efforts ever go unseen. Your efforts never go unseen. The efforts that you make in this world, you're having an argument with your wife or your husband. You know what? You really believe what she is saying or he is saying is wrong. But the argument's gone on for an hour and you're like, well, we got to put an end to this. And you're really upset, but you're like, you know what? I'm just not going to say anything this time. It's okay. We'll agree to disagree. Yes? And if you're not married already, prepare yourself because you're going to have to do a lot of that. If you want your marriage to be a successful one. Yes? If no, you want to be like 50% of the society that we live in, no. Don't agree to disagree. But if you want to have a successful marriage, you have to learn to agree to disagree. It's part of life, okay? Many of the brothers who are married there and the sisters, they're smiling now at this point. You in that moment, you're like, you know what? She's wrong or he's wrong. And you know what? I don't agree at all. And I want to tell him how it is. But whatever, it's okay. If you're not a believer, nobody sees that effort you just put in. Nobody. It doesn't count for anything. But when you're a believer, every little effort you make, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is watching. And this helps you. Because all of us, in the day-to-day lives that we have, there are moments where we may have to make sacrifices in situations where no one else is watching. No one else is watching. You might be in a position where you have to make a big sacrifice for your child. No one else might ever understand what sacrifice you made for this child. No one. And yet you have to make it. And as a believer, you sit back and you say, you know what? Between me and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He knows the sacrifice I made. And He will reward you heavily for that sacrifice. But only if you're a believer. If you're an atheist, for example, can you live life in that manner? No. In this world, the only thing that matters is results. If you work hard and get results, wonderful. If you work hard and you kill yourself and you don't get results, it's worth nothing. Nothing. Zero. That's the world we live in. But with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, all of your efforts are seen. This is why Luqman told his son, he said, Ya bunayya, my dear son, innaha in taku mithqala habbatin min khardalin. If you do something good or bad, it's the size of the mustard seed. It's a very small seed. You can Google it later. Habbatin min khardalin. Atakun fi sakhratin. You did it somewhere in the middle of nowhere. يَأْتِ بِهَا Allah. God will bring it for you on the day of judgment. He will acknowledge the effort that you made. He will acknowledge those efforts that you made that you weren't even able to actualize. A good intention you had that you never even got a chance to make it happen. He'll reward you for that too. But you can only look at life from this perspective if you are a believer. This is why Islam is a blessing in our lives. Yes, this is number 3. Moving on to number 4. When you are going through pain, when you are going through a difficult moment, you as a believer know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is there for you. He is there to support you. He is by your side. Whatever that might mean. You know He's there with you. But that's only if you're a believer. If you're an atheist, can you believe that? No. You're going through the most difficult time of your life. You can't pray to anybody. You can't ask anyone for help. There's no one by your side. It's just maybe some relatives or whatever, and that's it. No greater power, or no one else is there. But Islam says no, when you're going through the difficult moments of your life, the little cry that an ill person makes in the middle of the night, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, I hear that call. The Prophet told Ali ibn Abi Talib, he said, Ya Ali, Aneenul maridi tasbihun. The whimper of the ill person in the middle of the night. I consider it tasbih for me. And then he continued, he said, وَسِيَاحُهُ تَحْلِيلٌ. And when the pain is so much, he cries out, I consider him saying, La ilaha illallah. He's obeying me, and I'm right there with him. I am there to support him. وَسِيَاحُهُ تَهْلِيلٌ وَنَوْمُهُ عَلَى الْفِرَاشِ عِبَادَةٌ. Just that he's patient going through difficulty, I consider it. While he's lying in bed, he's doing ibadah. I count it as ibadah for me. But only if you're a believer. Only if you have this blessing of Islam in your life. You know that same religion that at the beginning we used to say, this is a burden. It's not a burden, it's a blessing. And then you add to that the relationship you have with Ahlul Bayt and how you can rely on this family in times of difficulty because they are an extension of the mercy of Allah. Ali ibn Musa Rada, salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi, the eighth Imam says, look at this line, this one hadith, very beautiful. He describes the relationship that you have with him. He says, there is never a Shia of ours that becomes ill and sick, going through difficult times, become ill and sick. إِلَّا مَرَضْنَا لِمَرَضِهِ. Except that it's like we also become sick with that same illness and sickness. We feel his pain so much, it's almost like we became sick with him. You have Ahlul Bayt to rely on. And then he moves on. وَلَا اِخْتَمَّ. He never becomes sad. إِلَّا اغْتَمَمْنَا لِغَمِّهِ. Except that we also become sad because he's sad. That relationship. And he says he never becomes happy. Yes? وَلَا يَفْرَحُ. He never becomes happy. إِلَّا فَرَحْنَا لِفَرَحِهِ. He never smiles unless that we smile because he's smiling, because he's happy. You can only have this relationship though when? If you're a believer. If you have Islam in your life. If you don't have it, you're deprived of these relationships. Yes? This is the belief system, the way it affects our day-to-day lives. Moving on to the legal system in Islam. The legal system in Islam affects your life on a day-to-day basis as well. How does it do that? Everyone, brothers and sisters, agrees on general moral concepts. Everyone agrees that praying to your Lord is a good thing. Everyone agrees that paying charity is a good thing. Everyone agrees, for example, that being nice to your parents is a good thing. That's the easy part. Islam tells you how to actually do these on a day-to-day basis. To what extent do I have to listen to my relatives? To what extent can I draw boundaries? Everyone will say it's good to be nice to your relatives. But when do I listen to them? When do I not listen to them? Everyone says it's good to be nice to your friends. But to what extent? Where should I listen to them? Where am I supposed to distance myself from them? Everyone says your parents are wonderful. To what extent? Everyone says charity is a good thing, but to what extent do I have to do it? To what extent if I do it, it's great, and if I don't do it, it's okay? I need to draw these lines so I can know how to live to my life. Otherwise, it's very easy. People say, Sheikh, charity has helped me so much in my life. That's why every year I give $1 of charity. I'm like, wait a second. Alhamdulillah, God has blessed you. No, Sheikh, charity is very important. I always give charity, $1. Everyone says charity is good. To what extent though? Where do you draw that line? Everyone says certain relationships between the two genders is immoral. But where do you draw that line? And Islam gives you this. And if you're not a believer, you are lost on these issues. And you have no idea what you're supposed to do. Everyone says a husband and a wife should somewhat divide their responsibilities. Everyone says this. But where and how do you divide these responsibilities? You have no idea. You're lost on all of these issues. And this is what Islam gives you. And this moral framework, this idea of knowing how I'm supposed to live my life, is something that an atheist and the greatest of atheists have always struggled with. Because they know what they're proposing does not solve this problem. Okay, I don't believe in any God. No problem. How am I supposed to live my life now? What am I supposed to do? What am I not supposed to do? That's why you will find people, famous atheists, they'll write books and they'll try very hard. They will say, you know what? Yes, even science can tell you what to do and what not to do in your life. Famous atheist, another one of the four horsemen, Sam Harris. Yes? He's written a book. It's called The Moral Landscape. The whole point of the book is to prove this, that without religion, you can still know what you're supposed to do and what you're not supposed to do. How? He says it's easy, and I'll explain it, and you guys tell me if this is easy or if this makes any sense at all. It's easy. If you want science to tell you how to live your life, you just have to go to science and ask science, which actions should I do to bring the most happiness in my life? Science, based on data, can tell you, if you live your life like this, you'll be a very happy life. If you live like this, not be a happy life. Whatever brings you more happiness in life, this is a moral deed. You should do it. Whatever doesn't bring you more happiness in life, you should stay away from it. This is immoral. The reason why this makes no sense at all is because science can't tell you what brings you happiness and what doesn't bring you happiness. That's exactly the problem. We don't have that knowledge. Scientists are still trying to figure out the basics of your diet. They're still trying to figure out a diet where you don't put on so much weight. They're going to tell me what brings me happiness, what doesn't bring me happiness. If these guys knew this, you know what it's like? It's like someone saying, Sheikh, it's very easy to realize which project you should invest your money in. Imagine you have two projects. You don't know which one to invest your money in, right? Imagine if this guy came to you and said, Sheikh, it's very easy to decide. You're like, how? The only thing you have to figure out is to see which of these two investments will give you the better return. That's the one you have to invest in. Okay, well, I know. How do I figure out which one gives me the better return, though? How do I know which deed is going to bring me happiness in my life? That's the whole discussion. I don't have that knowledge. Science doesn't have that knowledge. You know who has that knowledge, though? God. And He's already done all of that for you. And hence you have religion. But no, these guys don't want that option. So they have to go figure out, based on science, what brings happiness into your life, what doesn't bring happiness into your life. We don't have that knowledge. We're human beings. We're struggling with the basics. And therefore, we realize based on this, that this religion of Islam, though there is a burden involved in it, and anyone who denies that is not speaking truthfully. No, there's a burden in Islam. Of course, there's taklif, there's kulfa. It makes life difficult at times. But Islam says, I am a blessing for you overall. If you have me in your life, at the end of the day, you are walking away while you are blessed. And hence, you owe God, and God doesn't owe you. يَمُنُّونَ عَلَيْكَ أَنْ أَسْلَمُوا قُلْ لَا تَمُنُّوا عَلَيَّ إِسْلَامَكُمْ. Don't come to me saying, what does God owe me or owe you? No, you owe God something. Because this religion is a blessing for you. That an atheist, even if he is a moral individual, he is deprived of this blessing. With that, inshallah, we'll bring tonight's talk to an end. Inshallah, if we can dim the lights, we will prepare to hear the masa'ib of our beloved Imam al-Hussein and our beloved Lady Zainab. Sallallahu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. Sallallahu alayka ya ibna Rasulullah. This caravan of women and children, this caravan of the Ahlul Bayt, have now gone through many difficult steps and stages. They have gone through the first 10 days of Muharram, entering into the plains of Karbala, and the army of Hur has made them feel worried and concerned already. As time has progressed, they have gone through those days where there was not even enough water in the tents of Hussein. And these children, many of them were becoming thirsty, and they were calling out, Al-Atash, Al-Atash. And this call broke the heart of Hussein, and broke the heart of Zainab, and broke the heart of Ali al-Akbar. They have gone through those stages of witnessing the massacre on the 10th of Muharram. They've witnessed Qasim ibn al-Hassan go to the battlefield and never come back again. They've watched Ali al-Akbar go to the battlefield and come back with a lifeless body. They've even witnessed those moments when their uncle Abbas went to the battlefield, but his body was never brought back to them. Then they started to go through those moments where the tents were set on fire and the jewelry and the clothing of these women and children, some of it was stolen from them. And they were running around in the plains of Karbala, and Zainab finally gathered them, maybe under a half-burnt tent. These women and children have seen everything. And now these women and children have made this difficult journey towards the city of Sham. And if only they knew that things in Sham are only going to become more difficult than they already are. This is why when they asked Imam al-Sajjad of the most difficult part of this journey, 3 times Imam al-Sajjad said, Ash-Sham, Ash-Sham, Ash-Sham. He said Sham was the most difficult for us. What happened in Sham? What happened to the Ahlul Bayt in this city? They say as the caravan approached the city of Sham, this area had been decorated and everyone was prepared for a celebration. And they kept the family of the Ahlul Bayt outside of the gates for multiple days to disrespect them and to decorate the city and prepare the city for a celebration. Imagine that day when this family of the Ahlul Bayt now starts to walk into the city of Sham. Imagine all the eyes that are staring at this family. Imagine these women and children who have been through so many difficulties. Now these people are staring at them, humiliating them, disrespecting them, trying to humiliate them. The narration says when they were entering into the city of Sham, this was such a difficult moment that Kulthum came to Shimr and asked Shimr to move the heads of the shuhada ahead of this caravan. He said, at least now that we're coming into the city of Sham, move these heads ahead of the caravan so that when this caravan comes in, these women and children, people won't be staring at them so much. They'll be staring at the heads, they'll be looking at the heads, and they will move on, and these women and children will discreetly move behind them. And the Mal'un did the exact opposite of this. He said, because this is what you want, I will have the heads amongst you as you enter into the city of Sham. The narrator says, I came to the gates where the family of the Ahlul Bayt was entering into the city of Sham. I saw this family entering into the city in such a difficult time, in such a difficult position. They looked like they had been through so much pain and so much difficulty. He says, then I looked closer, I saw this man on a camel with no saddle, with chains on his body. I looked closer, I found out this is Ali ibn al-Hussein who's entering into the city of Sham. They bring this family. Imagine as they parade the family of the Ahlul Bayt through the city of Sham, they finally bring them to the courtyard of the Mal'un Yazid. And they say that the hands of these women and children, some of them were tied. And as some of them would walk faster, it would pull on the rope and would pull the other women and the children. It was such a difficult scene to witness. When they entered into the courtyard of Yazid, one of the women of Hussein said, Ya Yazid, what would you say to the Prophet if he came and saw his women and children like this, while your own women and children are free? The narration says everyone in the courtyard started to cry. Everyone in the courtyard started to shed tears. They realized how horrible of a situation this was. And Yazid, in order to change the atmosphere, he ordered for the head of Hussein to be brought into the courtyard. They say they brought the head of Hussein. Imagine what went through the hearts of some of these women and children when they saw the head of Hussein, the head of their brother, the head of their uncle, the head of their father. The narration says the Mal'un, he started to disrespect the head of Hussein, so much so that Jews and Christians raised objection to Yazid. They said, Yazid, we wouldn't even do this to the grandson of our own prophet. How dare you do this to the grandson of your own prophet? How dare you do this to the head of the grandson of Muhammad? And Zainab got up in those moments. Yazid threatened that he was going to take the life of Imam al-Sajjad. And Zainab got up bravely. and stood in the face of Yazid. And she said, if you want to take the life of Imam al-Sajjad, you have to take my own life. Why is Zainab standing up in these moments? Why is Zainab now the defender of the caravan of Hussein? Because there were many defenders before Zainab, but these defenders have lost their lives. These defenders have been martyred. Amongst these defenders was none but Ali al-Akbar. Ali al-Akbar was that young man that anytime Hussein needed help, he would go to his young son. Maybe because Ali al-Akbar used to remind Hussein of the Prophet. Maybe this is why Hussein used to go to him so often. What happened to Ali al-Akbar? How come he can't defend the Ahlul Bayt anymore? Because on the 10th of Muharram, there came a moment where Ali al-Akbar made his way towards the tent of Hussein. And Hussein knows exactly why Ali is coming to his tent. He knows exactly what Ali al-Akbar is coming to ask permission for. But he can't even bear this in his heart. What did the heart of this father go through in those moments when his young, strong man is standing in front of him? This young, strong son of his is standing in front of him, and he asked his father for permission. The narration says the moment he asked for permission, Hussein quickly gave him permission. He said, Ali, go. Maybe because Hussein's heart was burning in fire. Maybe because it was so much pain for the heart of Hussein. The narration says, he quickly gave him permission. He said, Ali, go. Don't set my heart on fire like this anymore. But Ali, before you go, you have to go to the tent of the women and the children. You have to say your farewell to the women and the children. The narration says, then Ali al-Akbar went to the women and the children. The moment he entered into the tents, the narration says all of these women gathered around Ali al-Akbar. The narration says some of them started to pull on the clothing of Ali al-Akbar. Some of them said, Ya Ali, don't leave us in the middle of this desert. Don't leave us with all of these enemies. Don't leave us with all of these individuals who are going to kill you. But what can the heart of Ali do in these moments? They say Ali al-Akbar forcefully pushed himself away from this tent. Imagine many of these women and children come to the entrance of the tent just to witness those moments as Ali al-Akbar is walking away. But you know who else was watching those moments? Hussein was watching those moments from his tent as well. And the narration says he raised his hand and he said, Allahumma ashhad. He said, Ya Allah, you bear witness. Now I'm sending the one that looks just like the Prophet. And anytime I used to miss the Prophet, I used to look at my son Ali al-Akbar. And the narration says tears were falling from the face of Hussein. And he could not even bear this pain anymore. He called out, he said, Ya ibn Sa'ad, qata'allahu rahimak kama qata'ta rahimi. May Allah put you through the same pain that you are putting my heart through. You know what was going through the heart of Hussein when Ali al-Akbar was walking away from these. And Zainab is watching this. And the other children of Hussein and Qasim is watching this. And Abul Fadl Abbas is watching this. They say Ali rode on his horse. He attacked the army. He fought very bravely until at one point he started to make his way back towards the tent. Imagine what the heart of Hussein went through when Ali came all the way back. He said, Ya Abata, Father, this armor is so heavy for me. And this thirst is killing me. Is there any water left? And Hussein said, Ali, why would you do this to my heart? Ali, you know there's no more water left in these tents. Go back to the battlefield. Your grandfather will quench your thirst very quickly. They say Ali went back to the battlefield. And this time Hussein looked at him with a look of despair. Because he knows this time is the last time Ali is coming back. Ali is never going to come back to these tents. The narration says Ali al-Akbar went back to the battlefield. He continued to fight bravely until he was struck on the head and he called out, Ya Abata, my father, come. The narration says Hussein rushed into the battlefield. He couldn't even wait to get by the body of Ali. And the narration says all of a sudden we saw Hussein sitting by the body of his son. He put his face on the face of Ali al-Akbar. And he said this one line, he said, Ya Ali, ala dunya ba'daka al-'afwa. I don't even want this world after you. I don't even want to be alive after you. This world is worth nothing to me after you. Then Hussein starts to, with the help of the other Ahlul Bayt, carry this body of Ali al-Akbar back to the tent. The narration said he was still speaking to his son. He said, Ya Ali, you left this world. Amma and فَقَدْ اسْتَرَحْتَ مِنْ هَمِّ الدُّنْيَا. You left this world and you left the worries and the pains of this world. But guess what, Ali? You left behind an old father of yours. وَبَقِيَ أَبُوكَ. And you left behind your father. And Hussein carries this body with the help of the other Ahlul Bayt all the way to the back of the tent. What went through the heart of Hussein in those moments? What went through the heart of Zainab as she sees the body of Ali al-Akbar being brought back all the way to the back of the tent? ألا لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون. Let us take our hearts to the plains of Karbala and send our salams to our beloved Imam. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah wa ala al-arwah allati hallat bifina'ik. عليك مني جميعا سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. Everyone. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين ورحمة الله وبركاته. Pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He gives us the tawfiq to be amongst the true followers of the Ahlul Bayt. Pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that all of those who have hajat, requests, all of those who are in pain, difficulty, dealing with illnesses, sicknesses, they are dealing with the loss of their loved ones, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala frees them from their difficulty and pain. And last but not least, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hastens the return of our beloved 12th Imam, bin Nabi wa alih, rahimallahu man qara'a surat al-Fatiha, as-salawati ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Sallallahu alayhi
السلام عليك يا سيدي ومولاي رسول الله. السلام عليك يا حبيب يا زينب بنت أمير المؤمنين رحمة الله عليك يا حبيب وعليك يا محمد بن النبي. وعليك يا محمد الصادق. وعليك يا موسى جعفر. السلام عليك يا غريب. السلام عليك يا حبيب يوسف. السلام عليك يا محمد الحبيب أيها الشهداء. السلام عليك يا علي بن محمد النبي. السلام عليك يا العسكري. السلام عليك يا صاحب السلام عليك يا السلام عليك يا السلام عليك يا الله أرجوك الله يرجاك وجعلنا من خير المستشهدين. السلام عليكم جميعا ورحمة الله. Allah is you, your brothers and sisters, for 40, 50 nights. The Prophet is above us. Ya Allah, grant them this young and grant the shifa of promise. الأرواح المؤمنين والمسلمين والمسلمات مع الصلاة.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل